So I am in the middle of our foundation walls, right in the middle, under the house, where the house is gonna go. And what they're gonna do is fill this. They're gonna have to fill this whole thing. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe 40 to 50 truckloads at least. We'll see, we'll count them as they come in. All right, were you able to count how many trucks came here to fill this thing up? Well, it was 33. 32 to fill it up, and then a 33rd that we had dumped right below me. I'm standing on the pile now, just to have an extra load to have on hand and to top this off after all the plumbing work is done next week. That being said, quite a few of those trucks were the larger quad axle trucks, so they hold a lot more. So when I estimated 40 to 50, I was thinking triaxles, and if it was triaxles, I could have been closer to that 40 trucks that would have filled this thing up. Another thing you might have noticed is, if you've seen the previous video on the building the block foundation wall, you may remember I talked about this being filled with red dirt, or potentially red dirt or something like that. Well, it ended up being something like that. The builder did say he was going to use red dirt here, but he was able to get a really, really good deal on this gravel here. And this gravel is just I guess like a dirty base or a crusher run, or it's got a lot of fines in it, so it packs really, really well, better than the red dirt. And since he got such a great deal for it, and the engineering behind this also, because of the really tall 6 foot, 7 foot wall that's on the back side there, so it's a lot, it's really deep. We wanted this to really, really pack, really well. And as you can see, it is packed hard, like concrete. And as you saw in the video, they packed it in really, really well. I mean, the skid steer, got the center packed in really well. But then they had the machines, the vibrating machines around all the edges. So as they shoveled and raked all of the gravel into the sides and the corners, all the nooks and crannies, and then took those machines and just packed it in really, really well all along the edges of the outer walls here. So it's pretty exciting that this is all filled in now, because I've been waiting for this day where I can walk out here, out into my family room, where it's going to be, and this is going to be our window wall here with our view. So this is our family room. I'm standing right in the middle of our family room and able to look out at the view from the height that the house will be at. So far, I'm really happy how this is all turning out, the materials that they're using. I talked to the block layer, and he was telling me how this block that we've got here is really good quality. It's better than the block that the cheap block you can get at the big box store. It's super heavy, strong. So that's encouraging, to hold back all of this gravel. And then again, the gravel that's packed in here, just better, just all around. I'm super happy with how this is turning out. Here you can see our front porch here, this really long run I talked about in the last video. You can see how they've packed all this in right up to the top of that block. And then we've got the piers along the house there to support the back side of the porch, because they're going to pour that concrete on top of all this block. And when they do that, with the form all the way around, the concrete will fill in these cores here. When the core fillers came last time, the porch wasn't quite done yet. So they have to either come back and fill these cores, or they'll just do it when they pour this slab. It'll just fill in when they pour that slab. Here you can see where they left those blocks out for that opening. And then they just packed this in really, really well first with a couple truckloads of this crusher run or dirty base. And we're able to drive those trucks right out on there and dump it in. So that's pretty cool. And the block layers will come back now and finish out this block. So the house is sitting on a kind of a hillside here. And like we've talked about before, it's 6 feet in the back, or 7 feet tall in the back actually. And it's filled in with all of this gravel. Well, there's moisture in this, and could be ground moisture coming from underneath, right? As the rain and the water goes down the hill here under the house, the groundwater, it could, come up inside this, and it needs a way out, right? All that moisture needs to come out. So all this concrete block and concrete itself, can wick moisture, right? So in order to relieve the pressure, the hydrostatic pressure that might build up in here from water, from groundwater, they drilled holes in the lower parts of the foundation wall here. And these weep holes will allow any groundwater that builds up that hydrostatic pressure within these walls here can weep out and relieve that pressure. It looks like they're about every, 10, 12 feet or so, and around each corner. And it's just on the back side here, on the down slope side of the house. So why did we choose to go with a concrete slab versus like a crawl space or a basement even? Because I mean, this is a slope right here. So it would totally make sense to do like a walkout basement right here. Well, we actually did start with a full walkout basement as part of our design for this house. But eventually we had to change that because of just the huge costs in putting a basement in here in Arkansas. Basements just aren't a thing around here, even though we do get, you know, the potential for severe weather with tornadoes. They're just not a thing around here. Apparently in the Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma area of the country, there are only 3% of homes that have basements. That's not very many. So why is that? Well, first, here in the Ozark Mountains, we have a lot of limestone and bedrock that's not too far down below the topsoil, and it could require some blasting, you know, to remove all of that stone to dig down deep enough for a basement, which is expensive. Second, the red dirt or clay that we have around here is not really good for drainage, and so you end up having a lot of moisture problems, and to mitigate that, it becomes very expensive. Third, our frost line here in the south is not very deep. Here in Arkansas, we're about 14 inches deep. So when excavating our footer and foundation down below 14 inches is not that big of a deal. But when you start moving north, the frost line gets deeper and deeper, right? And so you have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper for your footers. And before you know it, you're halfway there to a basement, so you might as well just finish digging the whole thing out. And then because there's not a whole lot of basements around here, there's just not that construction expertise, and so it becomes super costly. And with that, there's just, you know, no value to it. People around here just don't appreciate it as much. There's not as much value to them for the basements. So that way, when you go to sell your home, you're just not going to get your money back. So we just eliminated the whole basement option. It was just going to be too expensive, and because of this sloped hillside here, the architect drew it up as a crawl space. And I am just not a big fan of crawl space, but I really just thought that was my only option because of this sloped hillside. It wasn't until, you know, talking with our builder here that I even considered an elevated slab. When we were talking about it, and he explained that the cost is not that much more than a crawl space, and it's going to be a lot better. And we can do it even with this 6-7 foot tall back wall here. I'm like, really? Well, let's do it. I mean, typically a slab on grade is going to be a lot cheaper than a crawl space. It was the sloped part of this that makes this an elevated slab that makes it a lot more expensive. But when you're comparing it to a crawl space, it's about the same cost. So I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And especially with lumber prices the way they were. You know, the floor trusses, that lumber for all of the floor trusses I need for the crawl space, and then all of the plywood subflooring, it was just going to be really super expensive. Now, lumber prices have come down some. All right, I'm going to put a chair in my family room here and sit here and finish the rest of this recording because I can. First time sitting out here like this with the view behind me. This is awesome. So let's talk about pros and cons of a crawl space versus a concrete slab. First, cost. Typically, a slab on grade will win this one out from a cost standpoint versus a crawl space. In this situation though, this is an elevated slab, and an especially elevated slab, 6-7 feet on this back side here. And I keep saying 6 to 7 because depending on where you're measuring from, it's mainly 6 and it can be up to 7 on the outside here. But 6 to 7 feet deep on the side makes it a little bit more expensive than just a slab on a flat grade. Next, energy efficiency. I mean, a concrete slab is gonna win this one hands down. With a crawl space, it's completely, inefficient because it's super expensive and difficult to insulate all of that crawl space area. And because of that large, space of air underneath the floor, it's just going to be a lot more expensive to heat and cool the house. A monolithic concrete slab has such a huge thermal mass that will retain that heat or cold depending on the season and really cut down on your energy costs when trying to heat or cool the home. A definite negative for a crawl space, especially in a more wet and humid climate like we have here, where we get like average 47 inches of rain a year, is how prone they are for moisture problems that can create mold and mildew and rot. I mean, we had a crawl space in one of our houses long ago, and when we went to go sell the house, I had to clean out that crawl space because it had some issues and repair some things, and it was terrible. We had a lot of moisture issues in there, and I ended up getting sick, really, really sick with bacterial pneumonia. So never again. I am not a big fan of these crawl spaces. Another negative related to moisture is rot. And we talked about rot, but a crawl space just does not have the same lifespan as a concrete slab. A concrete slab will outlive a crawl space because a crawl space is much more susceptible to insect infestations like termites, carpenter ants and carpenter bees that can do a lot of damage to the wood under your house, especially when your house is in a wooded area like we have here. And being this close to the woods, speaking of infestations, a crawl space can easily become a nice, comfortable home for rodents, varmint, critters of all kinds to make this their home and then eventually sometimes die and then stink. And then I gotta crawl in there and get it out of there. And that's not any fun. Having a crawl space though does have some advantages, like being able to inspect for things like insects and mold and mildew and rot and critters and rodents and whatever, and then remediate the infestation, right? It makes it a lot easier to do that. Also, you can come down into the crawl space and inspect utility issues like plumbing and electrical and HVAC. In case you have a problem, you can inspect it, and also it makes it easier to repair it. So I guess if it's easier to inspect the issue, it's also easier to just have the issue. So I agree, this makes a slab a little less appealing, because if you did have an issue with, say, plumbing, a water line freezing under your slab for whatever reason, or somehow springing a leak, yeah, you'd have to jackhammer it out to fix it. And that's a lot of work. But most plumbing issues are from frozen pipes, which are prone to happen with crawl spaces, not slabs. In a slab, if you run your water pipes through a conduit system, then you can easily remove the broken pipe, and fix it. There's ways to get around that. The bigger, more logical con about a slab is if you want to remodel or move some of the utilities around, whether it's electrical, plumbing, or HVAC. That makes it a lot more difficult to do if you have a slab versus a crawl space. A crawl space, you can easily get into that crawl space and change the configuration of the house. With a slab, you can't do that. Not very easily without jackhammering it out. That's a minimal risk that I'm willing to live with. I don't plan on making any big remodeling changes with this, and that just points to, the better planning you need to do up front, that this house will be a workable house the way we designed it. So what are the pros for a crawl space? Well, one pro for a crawl space is storage. All that additional storage. But you know what? I don't need storage. I have got a giant barn right there. That giant barn where we have plenty of space to store all of our junk. So besides the storage space and the ease of repair or remodel, what else was there that's a pro for a crawl space? Was there something else? I can't think of any other reason why I would want a crawl space over a concrete slab foundation, especially if they're going to cost the same. All right, well, that's a wrap on this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it interesting to watch how this was all done. If you did, hit that like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, so you can stay up to date on everything we're doing out here at the ranch, including this modern farmhouse build. So until next time, keep living.